From the General Hollywood turned into a legend, to America's most famous commander whose reputation may have outgrown his battlefield record, to the Supreme Allied Commander whose greatest talent wasn't actually winning battles. These are the 5 most overrated American generals of World War II. Chapter 5. Omar Bradley. Nicknamed the GI's General, Omar Bradley became one of America's most respected commanders during World War II. Unlike George Patton, Bradley avoided the spotlight. He was calm, professional, and deeply respected by the soldiers under his command. That image helped make him one of the most admired generals in American history. But some historians believe his battlefield record wasn't as flawless as his reputation. Bradley successfully led First Army during the Normandy breakout before taking command of the massive 12th Army Group, the largest American field command ever assembled. Yet his record also includes 2 of the war's most controversial campaigns. The first was the Hurtgen Forest, where American forces suffered enormous casualties fighting through dense woods for limited strategic gain. Responsibility was shared among several commanders, but critics argue Bradley allowed the costly offensive to continue for too long. Only weeks later came the Battle of the Bulge. Germany's surprise offensive caught Allied intelligence off guard, exposing weaknesses throughout Bradley's command. None of this makes Bradley a poor general. He excelled at managing massive armies and maintaining strong relationships with Allied commanders. But many historians argue his reputation as America's greatest battlefield commander overlooks the costly mistakes that occurred under his leadership. Still, Bradley's legacy isn't nearly as controversial as the next general. Chapter 4. Douglas MacArthur. No American general understood the power of image quite like Douglas MacArthur. With his corncob pipe, aviator sunglasses, and the famous promise, "I shall return," he became one of the most recognizable military leaders of the 20th century. And to his credit, he kept that promise. After escaping the Philippines in 1942 under orders from President Franklin Roosevelt, MacArthur spent the next 2 years leading the Allied advance across the Southwest Pacific. In October 1944, he returned to the Philippines, fulfilling the pledge that made him a national hero. Those victories earned him legendary status. But they also sparked debate. Critics point to the opening months of the war, when much of his Far East Air Force was destroyed on the ground just hours after the attack on Pearl Harbor. While the Japanese attack caught the United States by surprise, historians continue to debate whether MacArthur could have reacted more quickly to reduce the damage. Others argue his reputation was strengthened by his talent for publicity. MacArthur carefully shaped his public image and often received far more attention than many of the commanders fighting alongside him. He also clashed with Allied leaders over strategy, particularly regarding the campaign to retake the Philippines instead of bypassing the islands. None of this changes what he accomplished. MacArthur successfully led the Southwest Pacific campaign, liberated the Philippines, and accepted Japan's formal surrender aboard the USS Missouri. Those achievements are undeniable, but whether they make him one of America's greatest military geniuses or simply one of its greatest military leaders is a debate historians still have today. MacArthur's reputation was built on dramatic victories and unforgettable moments. The next general earned worldwide fame for liberating Rome, but many historians believe his biggest decision allowed Germany's army to escape. Chapter 3. Mark Clark, June 1944. After months of brutal fighting at Anzio, the Allies finally have the breakthrough they've been waiting for. For the first time, they have a real chance to trap Germany's 10th Army before it can retreat north. If successful, it could destroy one of Germany's strongest forces in Italy and potentially shorten the campaign. The commander in position to make that happen is General Mark Clark. Clark had already earned praise for leading the U.S. Fifth Army during the difficult Salerno landings in 1943. But his greatest and most controversial moment came during the breakout from Anzio. General Harold Alexander's plan called for Allied forces to cut Highway 6 near Valmontone, blocking the German escape route. Instead, Clark shifted the main effort toward Rome. On June 4, 1944, American troops entered the Italian capital, making it the first Axis capital liberated by the Western Allies. It was a historic achievement. But while the Allies celebrated, most of the German 10th Army escaped north, where it continued fighting for nearly another year. Historians have debated Clark's decision ever since. Supporters argue capturing Rome delivered an enormous political and psychological victory. Critics believe destroying the German 10th Army would have been the far greater military success. British historian Max Hastings even described it as one of the Allies' greatest missed opportunities in Italy. To be fair, there is no guarantee the Germans could have been completely trapped. The terrain, German defenses, and the realities of the battlefield made the situation far more complicated than it appears on a map. Still, Clark's legacy remains tied to that single decision. For some, he liberated Rome. For others, he let an entire German army get away. Before we reveal the top two, who do you think is the most overrated American general of World War II? Let us know in the comments. The next general won the war in Europe, but many historians argue his greatest strength wasn't commanding battles at all. Chapter 2. Dwight D. Eisenhower. No American general is more closely associated with victory in Europe than Dwight D. Eisenhower. As Supreme Commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force, he oversaw D-Day, coordinated millions of Allied troops, and helped lead the campaign that ultimately defeated Nazi Germany. Without Eisenhower, the Allied coalition may never have functioned as effectively as it did. So why is he on this list? Because many people confuse being the best Supreme Commander with being the best battlefield general. Before World War II, Eisenhower had never led troops in combat. His greatest strengths weren't tactical brilliance or aggressive battlefield command. They were organization, diplomacy, and coalition leadership. He had to keep powerful personalities like George Patton, Bernard Montgomery, Charles de Gaulle, and Winston Churchill working toward the same objective despite constant disagreements. That alone was an extraordinary achievement. But some of his strategic decisions remain debated. His broad front strategy, which spread Allied forces across a wide front, rather than concentrating everything into one decisive thrust toward Berlin, has divided historians for decades. Supporters argue it kept pressure on German forces everywhere and prevented dangerous gaps between Allied armies. Critics believe concentrating more force on a single axis might have ended the war sooner. Eisenhower also approved Operation Market Garden, Montgomery's ambitious plan to seize bridges in the Netherlands. The operation ultimately failed, delaying the Allied advance into Germany. To be clear, Eisenhower wasn't the architect of that plan, but as Supreme Commander, he approved it. None of this diminishes what he accomplished. He successfully held together the largest military alliance in history and led it to victory. But that's exactly where the debate begins. Was Dwight Eisenhower America's greatest general? Or was he America's greatest coalition leader? Those aren't necessarily the same thing. Eisenhower became the face of Allied victory in Europe, but no American general has become more legendary or more mythologized than the man who takes our #1 spot. Chapter 1. George S. Patton. No American general has become more iconic than George S. Patton. The pearl-handled revolvers, the polished steel helmet, the fiery speeches. The image of a fearless commander always charging toward the enemy has made him one of the most celebrated military leaders in history. And unlike many legends, Patton earned much of that reputation. He played a key role in North Africa, helped lead the invasion of Sicily, and commanded the U.S. Third Army during the drive across France. His rapid advance after the Normandy breakout and his famous relief of the 101st Airborne during the Battle of the Bulge remain some of the greatest operational achievements by any American commander in World War II. So why does he top this list? Because over time, Patton's legend has grown even larger than his actual wartime record. Many people remember him as the single greatest American general of the war. But victory in Europe depended on far more than Patton's aggressive style. His success relied heavily on Allied air superiority, an unmatched logistical network, and the coordination of countless other commanders operating across multiple fronts. His boldness also came with risks. During the Sicily campaign, his race to capture Palermo and later Messina was driven as much by personal rivalry with Bernard Montgomery as by strategic necessity. And his infamous slapping incidents in military hospitals nearly ended his career, forcing Eisenhower to sideline one of his most capable field commanders for months. None of this means Patton wasn't brilliant. He was undoubtedly one of America's finest battlefield commanders and perhaps its most aggressive offensive leader. But popular culture has transformed him into something even bigger, a military genius who single-handedly carried the Allied war effort. The reality is more complicated. Patton was extraordinary, but he wasn't a one-man army. Every general on this list helped the United States achieve victory in World War II. None of them were incompetent, and none deserve to be remembered as failures. But history has a way of turning great commanders into larger-than-life legends. Over time, public reputation can overshadow the full complexity of what actually happened on the battlefield. Whether you agree with this ranking or think we got it completely wrong, that's what makes military history so fascinating. So who do you think is the most overrated American general of World War II? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more military history every week. Until next time, thanks for watching.